rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Jim, you want to start us off?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. First item is public comments, and it looks like we only have one. Tristan, I believe that you wanted to make a comment this evening, and also, so just give us your name and where you reside. Please.
Can I take the mask off? Or leave it on?
No, you need to leave it on,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
My name's Tristan Reeser. My address is 91516 Dolezal Lane, Coos Bay, Oregon. Some of you probably are aware that there was recently vandalization of the Coos Bay Skate Park. I was part of the original people that built the park. I stepped forward and offered to volunteer to repair it. The repairs ended up being quite extensive. I spent a total of 154 hours and 35 minutes on the park in the last 30 days. Vandalization happened from a young scooter rider. It states on the rules that there is no motorized vehicles, scooters, or bikes allowed in the park. It has not been enforced in many, many years, mainly because I stopped going to the park. I built my own skate park in my backyard, didn't have the drive to go down there. I'm getting older. It's kind of an advanced park. And now that I've stepped forward to repair the park, I'm going to be down there a lot more, and I'd like to enforce the rules of the park. Not just that rule, but every rule on the list. The sign has been posted on the park fence since 2009 when it was adopted by the City Council. I have the resolution number here if you guys want to look it up. It references an ORS number as well. I basically wanted to come in front of you guys and introduce myself and let you know that I am willing to work on that park. I'm actually kind of having a hard time standing up here. I'm not a good public speaker.
Now you're doing fine.
I just wanted to make you guys aware of the park rules and the fact that it hasn't been enforced. There is a liability to the city to leave the rules there and allow the bikes and the scooters to ride it based off of the ORS number that I researched. So I'm willing to go down there and enforce the rules, but there's only so much I can do. If they refuse to leave, I know the police is extremely busy with everything else going on. Not really sure the direction I should take it. If it's okay with the city council for me to enforce the rules, or like...
Well, we're in some legal areas here, so Roger, Nate, how do you want to, how do we go about this?
I'm not sure that he'll be able to do that, but that's really going to be a Parks Commission issue.
I mean, I'm willing to ask them to leave if they try to ride it. It's more of a liability issue to the city, in my opinion, because of the ORS code.
I would probably say, and Nate can follow up, but we do have recreational immunity in this state, and so the city's not liable. It's a use at your own risk, and if you violate the rules, then it's truly at your own risk.
That's true. I mean, I think that is applied, but I mean, you know, obviously he's trying to do a good thing here, and, you know, from the legal point of view, I wouldn't have a problem with him just reminding someone that you're not supposed to ride a bike here, but you certainly don't want to get in a confrontation.
No, I'm not looking to
anything
do
like
that.
that over it, and it's not worth getting hurt over it either.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's where Gary and his people come in if there's if people are really having a
Yeah.
problem.
If there's a violation of any of the rules, obviously you can give dispatch a call, non-emergency number, unless it is an emergency, 911 obviously, but
Yeah.
non-emergency list. And we got officers available. We will, you know, dispatch them there. I can't guarantee that you'll be there right away, but, and the best thing is, I mean, if you can identify them, give us a description. If they have, leave, there's some sort of confrontation, then once the officers get there, then they can deal with it as a violation of the park rules.
Well, so far today was the first day opening. I was there all day. I approached some of the people that came and tried to ride their bikes and their scooters, and I explained the situation to them. They were all respectful, but I'm expecting it not to always be that way. So I really just want to know what direction I can take that, and I'm more than happy to call the non-emergency number if it needs to go that direction. I am looking forward to working with the Parks Committee. I'm going to try to make that next meeting as well to improve the park. There's some more pressing issues with, there's been a lot of non-maintenance to that park since it's been built. There's been some settling, there's some cracking that I've noticed that is structural that will need to be addressed here soon. So I'll be talking to the Parks Committee about that in the future. I think that's pretty much all I have.
Well, I appreciate it, Tristan, and I appreciate all the time you put into it. I've been walking by and I've seen you there, and I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I'm glad you came to the council. And I'm glad that you're willing to oversee this, and you know, as the chief said, you know, call if there's an issue. And then Carmen's on the Parks Commission, and so I'm sure that you'll see him when you approach them, and they'll be glad to help however they well, if they can. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. I also want to say thank you to Dave Crandall at the Parks and Scott Davis. They've been a lot of help with me down there.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'm glad you're back involved on it, and so I know it's used a lot, and we appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you for coming down. Come back, see us, let us know how it's going.
Tristan, I want to know,
To get it there in the first place, and I don't want to see it disrespected and
Sure.
destroyed.
No, I totally understand. Yeah, you put a lot of time into it and effort.
I want to know where you got your shirt. I think we all want one.
Yes.
I thought it was appropriate for the opening day of the skate park. Not so much for the council, but it was a
For
gift.
those who can't see it, it says, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right."
We love it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Hey, thank
Thanks
you,
again,
Tristan.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks
care.
for all your hard work.
Okay, any other public comments? No? Okay, consent calendar. Council?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as submitted. Just wanted to point out, there's a couple of grants that we'll be accepting, one for the fire department and one for the library, which is great. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, number 4 on the agenda this evening, and there's some agendas out back if you need one to follow along, is a public hearing on proposed comprehensive plan and zone destination map amendment for 2550 Woodland Drive. This would require an enactment of an ordinance. Jim, are you handling this?
Carolyn should take it.
Oh, there's Carolyn.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. Mr. James Pinninger, the owner of 2550 Woodland Drive, has requested this comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning of the property from medical park to low-density residential in the comprehensive plan and low-density residential 6 in the zoning regulations. The north approximately 600 square feet of the house area is an active medical office. The remaining 1,000 square feet or so has been vacant since 2018. The owner has not been successful finding medical personnel to rent the property. That isn't allowed use under the current regulations. And for this reason, he has submitted these amendments to the city so that he can rent the unit, the 1,000 square feet, to a long-term renter. The medical office located in the north end of the structure that's still active would remain, and that would be a grandfathered use until such time as it would be vacated, and then he could rent it as a residential unit. Staff is recommending that the council enact the ordinance that's attached to your staff report, and that would authorize the comprehensive plan amendment from medical park to low-density residential, and it would amend the zoning regulations and the map from medical park to low-density residential, and that is for 2550 Woodland Drive.
Council, any questions for Carolyn on this? Seems pretty straightforward. If we agree, we need a motion.
This is a public hearing, right?
Oh, sorry. Yes, let me open the public hearing for the proposed comprehensive plan on 2550 Woodland Drive. Any comments? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Now, Council, how would you like to proceed?
I move we enact ordinance authorizing the comprehensive plan map amendment from Medical Park MP to low-density residential and amending the zone designation map from Medical Park to low-density residential for 2550 Woodland Drive.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to do the plan amendment map, would require an enactment of the ordinance. Roll call, Melissa. I remembered.
An ordinance of City of Coos Bay amending the comprehensive plan map designation for 2550 Woodland Drive from Medical Park MP to residential low RL, and amending the land use zone map designation from Medical Park MP to low-density residential DR6. Counselor DeNovo?
Aye.
Counselor Farmer?
Aye.
Counselor Kilmer?
Aye.
Counselor Marlar?
Aye.
Counselor Matthews?
Aye.
Counselor Miles?
Aye.
Mayor Benetti?
Aye.
Ordinance number 528 has been duly enacted.
Okay, next item is a public hearing for adoption of fiscal year 2021 supplemental budget. This would require an adoption of resolution 20-24. Before we open the public hearing, Nicole, you have any comments?
I would just point out, which you did earlier, part of the supplemental budget is for the 2 grants we received for the police department and the library, so we're going to appropriate those funds. And then the additional part of the supplemental budget is we have been working with the Charleston Sanitary District for their funding portion of the treatment plant 2. We've gotten to that point. They were able to get their funding finalized with rural development. We received that, I believe, last week, maybe the week before. So we need to be able to appropriate those funds coming in.
So in the Charleston Sanitation District, they have paid us off in full for their portion, correct?
Yes.
And because of, unfortunately, the delay, but they saved money, did they or did they not, because of the lower interest rate? Did they benefit from it in some fashion?
I think their goal was, yes, to go through the rural development with the lower interest rate, and there were some grant funds available there, so.
Good. All right.
Yeah, I
Great.
think they saved approximately, if I remember right, approximately about $20,000 a year in interest fees.
No, that's great. Good.
Wonderful.
So I'm going to open up the public hearing for the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 supplemental budget. It's resolution 20-24. You heard our finance director give the explanation on the reason for the supplemental budget. Any comments on this? Hearing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. And council, how would you like to proceed?
I'll make a motion to
adopt Resolution 20-24 to approve a supplemental budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution 20-24. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passes. Okay, next item is adoption of resolution 20-25. Carolyn, are you going to be handling this? It's going to be about Coos Bay housing needs analysis. I think we also have a letter before us addressing some of this.
We do. Jake Callister is here this evening, and he will make the presentation, and I will hand it over to him.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Excellent. Hi, Jacob Callister with the Lane Council of Governments. We had the opportunity to visit on September 22nd. I'm sharing my screen here. Is that something people can see?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, council members. Circling back, we had a productive work session agenda item on the 22nd. This is now coming back to you for a public hearing. The approach that I felt we could take was, for the sake of the record, I could provide a really expedited overview of the housing needs analysis and circle back on a few items of feedback that we've heard, and then obviously if there are items to hear from the public, we'll hear that. So I don't have my camera, and so I thought it was a courtesy to give you a sense for who I am. Jacob Callister, again, principal planner with the Lane Council of Governments. Been working with Carolyn on a number of items in Coos Bay for a couple of years now. So this is the latest. It's been a pleasure always to work on Coos Bay items. ultimately what we're trying to do here is present with this housing needs analysis overview that we've generated this through an iterative and collaborative process. We generated two components of this thing, which are the buildable lands inventory, a housing needs analysis that builds on that, and then we'll look at a couple of the steps that this fits into contextually. This is the Housing Advisory Committee that was involved in that process. We had a number of meetings from the beginning of the year. This is the schedule that we took on. So quite a few meetings, quite a few iterations of the analysis, and lots of side conversations as well that touch on certain specific issues. The regulatory framework for this is Goal 10. Statewide Planning Goal 10 is housing. It addresses the need for providing for housing choices, making sure that the residents of Oregon have opportunities for appropriate housing. Also, Goal 14, urbanization, which looks at supply, the supply and demand component of land use. And most recently, some House bills that came down from the Oregon legislature to sort of provide not only a mandate, but some funding to get some of this work done. So we've generated a buildable lands analysis and a housing analysis that's housed inside the housing needs analysis. One of the other things that's happening is, and I don't have it on here, but there's a housing production strategy that's being developed that feeds into and works in tandem with the housing needs analysis. And there's also, we're sort of on the cusp of a regional housing needs analysis, which is part of, again, the House Bill 2003 requirement. That's all analysis level. What we're presenting to you is a request to accept our analysis to allow us to move fully into the next phase, which is to incorporate components of that into some ideas and proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan, which will come to that same advisory committee and ultimately to you. And then following in the typical sort of planning methodology, that policy needs to be implemented through the implementation instruments that the city has. So the municipal code, the zoning code specifically, and other development code components. The objective was to create a characterization of current housing needs and current housing dynamics, current supply and demand, and then also to look to the future to forecast some of those dynamics and try to assume some things about the future and how to prepare for the future as well. We use data sources that range from federal census sources, GIS data, to local permit data, other local information, as well as information that could be considered anecdotal or things that members of our Housing Advisory Committee are seeing on the ground in their professions or in their work, and then trends that exist at the national, state, and local level. I gave you a bit of an in-depth version of this little graphic. We're just going to go over it quickly, but essentially the buildable lands inventory is an attempt to characterize what's happening and to put that characterization into bins and try to understand essentially the ultimate question of what are the buildable acres that exist. So what is the land in the city of Coos Bay currently that could accommodate current need as well as future need? And then to reconcile that with that need and to find out if there's a deficit and a surplus. In Coos Bay's case, we found that there's currently a surplus of buildable land when you compare it with the need. You can see the table that summarizes all of this in a more technical manner. That's included in that study. You'll see that 480 acres have been identified as buildable and what that translates into as far as units are concerned. The analysis includes maps that are essentially the foundation for that spatial analysis that was conducted, putting all of these properties into sometimes numerous categories, but characterizing those. One of the key characterizations involved environmental constraints, so something related to natural phenomena or certain vulnerabilities that properties had. The housing needs analysis itself begins with an establishment of population. Current population, although easier than the future, also is a bit of a nuanced thing. We use census data and other PSU population research population estimates. But even then, we have to provide some sort of an adjustment to get to literally, there's no place where you can go and say, what is the population right now? You have to extrapolate from sort of the nearest certified estimate and try to bring it forward to a date, in time, cross-section in time. So we then take that population figure and apply census demographics to it. So renter and owner, tenure, age, income, and then the other really important piece of this is the housing stock itself, right? And so there's kind of two elements to that. There's the housing stock that exists, simply characterizing how many of each unit type exists. And then there's also the correlation of that population with that housing stock. And so that's largely done through census information to help us attach how these populations are, what units they're in currently. And so the first piece of that is to characterize a current demand dynamic and to figure out at present what are the needs. Then the exercise is to utilize the population forecast that we get from PSU and establish a future end date for our planning period, in this case 2040. We have additional population that's going to be added. We apply demographics. We look at our existing housing stock, which is going to, most of it is going to go with us into the future, not all of it, but most of it. And the exercise there is to then reconcile what we have and establish not only how much housing, but housing of what type we will need. So this is a really high-level summary of that exercise number-wise, looking at the current population and the future population, trying to estimate what our current housing units are now, what they will be going forward, establishing, or rather adopting the census average household size. What we end up with using the model that we have, the housing needs model that essentially breaks each of those populations and housing types into categories, is a result that establishes where deficits and where surplus exists in certain housing types. Utilizing that, we end up with these final total new acre units needed, a total of 604. These are distributed in the categories that you see here: single family, 2 unit, 3 or 4, 5+ manufactured homes and parks. Part of what we were seeing was a need in that sort of middle housing area. And we talked about this in the work session. We had determined that the way to move forward that made, frankly, the most objective sense was to account for the Ocean Shores manufactured home park facility that has received its entitlements and work is underway, that we would see, just objectively, we would see an increase in that particular type because we had a data point that clearly supported that conclusion. And in fact, would have called into question had we simply ignored that dynamic. So that's the distribution that you see there. That translates into the land acre need. We end up with about 79 acres of land need. You subtract that approximately 79 acres from that 480, and that sort of lays out your surplus. One of the things that I hope I touched on last time and want to emphasize now is that there's nothing in this particular analysis that somehow puts sideboards on that 79 acres. And so this is an analysis to address goal 10 to show the need that as it relates to the future population forecast. There's nothing that places a cap on 79 acres. There are 480 buildable acres, technically speaking, as per this analysis. And even that, has a certain subjectivity to it. And a developer or a property owner inclined to develop on their property is not constrained in any way by this housing needs analysis to do so. And so you can see the characterization of the acreage that exists out there. We end up with a 79 acre determination of need going forward. That is sort of a minimum. If the city had, say, 50 buildable acres, they would be obligated to expand their UGB to account for those additional 30 acres of need. That's often when those numbers become particularly important, is when you're looking at an expansion. So again, a surplus that exists in the community presently. One of the things, items of feedback that we heard that we wanted to touch on, we heard from a Ms. Shar Luther, who is a local of the area. She belongs to what she referred to as the Coos Housing Action Program. I've also heard it referred to as the Coos Housing Action Team. And it's a group that was involved in working on the 2018 Regional Housing Study. And this was a statement that was actually prepared by Thomas Eddington, who is a consultant who supported that group and that effort. And this was a statement that they wanted shared in this meeting. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it. The detailed nature of the ongoing housing work in the city seems right on track. And if we could recommend anything to the council, it would be to not forget the most important thing the city can do to encourage affordable and workforce housing, is to collaborate and partner with the private nonprofit entities. This is most easily done by conveying land that is owned by the city at no or only minimal cost to these entities in exchange for deed-restricted affordable less than 60% AMI and workforce housing 60 to 120 AMI, and any internal city work to create small lot subdivisions and or rezone will be necessary, in particular before disposition to those private nonprofit entities not familiar with the entitlement and rezoning processes. These can be complicated endeavors. The final recommendation is to ensure that a complete housing ladder is addressed as property is donated, sold, disposed to these entities. While housing for those households earning less than $15,000 annually is most in need in the city and also true for the entire nation, housing for the workforce at all levels is needed and should be addressed by the city. I'm happy to speak with anyone individually and know that you all are on top of it. I also wanted to convey how honored we were to have worked with the community in 2018 to complete the Coos County Housing Analysis and Action Plan, and we are here to help in any way needed as we continue to work with the Housing Action Team and in the creation of a housing fund, Coos Housing Access Program. We are excited to see what materializes over the next year or so. So we appreciated the comments from the Coos Housing Action Program. Carolyn has been in touch with them, and this feedback is going to pivot very nicely into the process that's being undertaken presently to look at policies in the existing comprehensive plan and a review of the development code. And so that this information not only is now part of the record, but it's firmly established in sort of our suite of points of input for the process that's being undertaken by our group and another group working on the housing production strategy. And so this is noted and definitely a part of pivoting forward. The other comment that we received that we worked closely with someone who provided some comment was the Fair Housing Council. It's a nonprofit, the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. So they work statewide on issues around civil rights and just matters of fair housing. Their particular concern, if you look at this table here, was in this lowest category, and this should stand out to anybody who looks at that study and says, oh wow, that's very interesting. The darker orange that you see here is essentially the demand. So in that lowest category, you see a demand that appears to be, and this is census figures, appears to be not substantial compared to some of these others. And in the supply category, you see a pretty significant amount of housing. What the Fair Housing Council's concern was not so much the figures, and it's something that they see in other studies, pointed to a few examples and others that we had seen where this is a phenomenon that occurs in the census data. They provided a recommendation and some ideas about how to reflect that, some of the nuance in that, which I think we agreed at a staff level that was an important thing to include. The idea that a misinterpretation of this table would be that this tall column here represents a bunch of price point units that are just sitting out there on the market waiting for willing, hopeful owners. That's not at all the case. What this represents is a characterization of the number of units in the community that currently are priced by the census at that price point. And there's a few nuances that exist in that, a few things to really consider. One is that although the census does make a sort of deliberate accounting for this, there's still significant potential for those to be undervalued. So when they eventually go to market, they're actually worth quite a bit more than they may be assumed to be in the methodology of the census. And so they're not as affordable as they appear. That could be accounting for that. There's also just the simple fact that new buyers at that level have a lot of obstacles to overcome when owning in any respect. And so that is something that really should be accounted for and a nuance that should be added. There's also the fact that you probably have some of these middle income families, households that are, all of these are occupied. The majority of them are currently occupied. So the turnover is a concern. And there probably is a lot of pressure on those. As you can see here, a lot of these folks who aren't finding supply at their price point are purchasing those lower priced units. And so what the Fair Housing Council wanted to see was a little bit of a discussion. They didn't want to change the numbers because they recognize that the numbers sort of are what they are, but they wanted a little bit of narration, and we agreed at the staff level that we thought that was merited. And so we propose in that document a few points of narrative. So this is in the executive summary where we added the following language. Although existing owned units at the lowest income range appear to far exceed modeled demand, the city recognizes that true ownership opportunities are likely misrepresented by these figures, and anecdotal evidence suggests that there is some genuine unmet demand for ownership in the lowest income range. And then a few other little nuances to just account for that statement. And so again, pointing out that we don't want the key takeaway from figure 4.6 to be, okay, we don't need to worry at all about that lowest income range when we're thinking about ownership, that it persists as a consideration. The second point is within the document itself. This is directly following that table. Though figure 4.6 indicates a surplus of lower cost units, it should be noted that there is still demand for ownership housing affordable at lower price points among new buyers and low-income households in Coos Bay. Home ownership is likely less accessible to households with lower income levels than the figure implies, for a number of reasons, including potentially undervalued housing stock, low levels of ownership turnover, and middle-earning households purchasing homes at lower value points in the absence of cost-appropriate options for those residents. And then towards the end here, just essentially rather than calling out the mid and higher, just noting that there is need across all those income levels for ownership. And so We iterated with the Fair Housing Council on that, and they noted that they felt that their concern was being addressed. I think it's an important nuance to add in the document and to create and to reflect, frankly, what we heard from the Housing Advisory Committee. We had real estate representation and folks who noted that they're hearing from clients, who have need in that area. So we want to make sure that although the numbers can paint one picture, there's nuance that can be added to help understand that better. So the findings, these are just slightly adjusted from what you saw on the 22nd. There's currently sufficient buildable capacity within Coos Bay, within those zoning categories. Just kind of summarizing this one, there is work to be done within the comp plan and within the development code to reflect some of the needs that have emerged from that, the housing needs assessment at a policy level. No need to expand an urban growth boundary, but certainly opportunities to review and potentially refine some of the policy and implementation. Need for rental units is focused in the lowest income category, but there's also need, again, this is that ladder, the housing ladder concept that Mr. Eddington addressed, where one of the ways that you can address lower income issues is by providing middle income issues so that you create that ladder so that everybody along that spectrum has appropriate housing options. And so no one's pushed out, or you mitigate that. Middle housing is an appropriate focus for Coos Bay, and this isn't really called out specifically in the housing needs assessment, but for this presentation, pointing to the housing action team's point that the city should collaborate and partner with private and nonprofit groups. So those are the findings, and that is again the overview of the housing needs analysis. The staff is requesting that the council accept the analysis and that we can sort of formally move forward with that analysis as a one piece of the puzzle in providing an update to the comprehensive plan and the development code. Thank you.
All right, Council, you have any questions on this resolution or the comments that Jim made and also the changes that have been proposed?
I'd just like to highlight two items from it. It was a very productive committee that I got to serve on with Stephanie. I think one of the important changes we were able to make, it didn't impact the outcome in terms of the buildable acres, but it gave us a more accurate representation of what buildable land we have. The last buildable land study, I believe it had been in 2010. And at that time, there was no consideration given for the slope of landscapes, for the wetlands, for the tsunami inundation zones, and we were able to work those into this buildable lands survey. So any land that has a steeper grade than 25% was filtered out. It would be overly cumbersome to developers, and that was a positive outcome, I think, of it. One part that I think was troubled, but it's because there's no legislative mechanism for it, is that there's a recognition that there is a good deal of landscape in Coos Bay that's undeveloped, but that doesn't account for land that's owned by people that are holding back from developing it. There's no legislative mechanism to address that or compensate for that. It just happens to be what it is.
So, just to make sure, the 480 acres that it's saying that we have in surplus or in stock excludes the land that is over 25%?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. That's really good to know. That was one of my questions.
Yeah, it gave us a more accurate representation of what buildable lands are. I thought that was a good discussion that we had.
Yeah, I've been asked that question many times myself, so it's good.
I just wanted to thank the committee, Councilor Kilmer and Councilor Farmer and Jake from LCOG for all of his work on this. And I think we talked a little bit about it in the work session when we had this conversation, that what I find encouraging now is, I think we know our marching orders, and our marching orders tell us that we need to be providing incentives for low-income housing, and so that's what I, especially since we have, 500, and we talk about this a lot because of Roger. We have over 500 housing starts, including the manufactured homes, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we know what our marching orders are, so thank you for everyone's work on this.
I just wanted to comment that I agree with Lucinda that this is good information, and just to note that this council has kind of been on this parade, having attended the League of Oregon Cities and looking at incentives and things like that. This council has been discussing this for quite some time, so this actually gives us a tool to work with and future councils to work with, and the city.
I have a question that's kind of outside the scope of us specifically, but it relates to the state of Oregon, and I'm not sure, Jake, if you have the ability to answer this question, but it says that our projected annual average growth rate is 0.4% for Coos County between 2018 and 2040. I was just wondering what the state average is, if you might have that off the top of your head.
Ooh, I don't. I don't. I could probably scramble right now to track that down, but I'm guessing it. I mean, it's higher than that for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'm just interested to know where we sit in terms of projected growth rate. And and that's something I can do in my own research, but in terms of other towns and in our area, and just seeing where we're
I
at.
can direct you to the, again, I mean, we could pull it out now and get answers, but I think maybe it'd be effective to send you the PSU provides that regional analysis, and it does all the comparisons against the state and sort of other regionals. It is the answer to your question. I just don't have it at my fingertips, but it's very common, and it certainly was a point of discussion at the work session, right? That the forecast is always, I don't know anybody who's, it's not common that people are really thrilled with their forecast.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Didn't Mayor Soji question this about how this was done?
I think she was doing that mostly at the time when we were looking at a potential growth, should Jordan Cove be realized. It didn't take that into effect or into account when it did those calculations. And her point was that sometimes it misses those nuances that's unique to us.
Right.
I think what I heard from Jake is that they looked at some of that
Okay,
and took some of that into account.
good. Any other questions for Carolyn or Jake or anyone else on this? All right, Jake, thank you so much for your input on this and all the work you've done. So council, how would you like to proceed?
Public hearing?
Public hearing.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Adoption. Okay, so we're going to open a public hearing for, is there going to be a public hearing on this resolution? This is a resolution, right?
It's just a resolution.
Yeah, there's no public hearing.
Roll call.
Adoption of
has-
Resolution 20-25, accepting 2020 Coos Bay Housing Needs Analysis, right?
Yeah, you do have a section under action. Request is to go ahead and open a public hearing and accept public comments before considering the resolution.
All right, so we got the comment from Jake. So we're going to open the public hearing. Are there any public comments? Bob?
Thank goodness we had that public hearing.
Yeah, Bob sat here.
He's been
Bob's been
waiting
waiting
all
this whole time. I'm just going to skip over it.
I just really want to congratulate the council and the city staff on this project. The over 30 years that I've been working on housing issues in this community, this is the first concerted effort that I've seen from the city of Coos Bay in addressing the problem. So I think that's really great and really appreciate the work that everybody has done with it. And it does mesh in well with the other activities that have been happening in the community. To address Jacob's misunderstanding, the Housing Action Team is the community group that has actually been doing a lot of the planning efforts in the non-governmental sector, and that produced the housing plan. The Coos Housing Action Program is a legal entity that is just about in the final approval process to create a housing trust fund. And so stay tuned for that. You'll be hearing more as we get the final governmental approval for our legal status of that.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Now, council, how would you like to move on Resolution 20-25?
I move that we adopt Resolution 20-25, accepting the 2020 housing needs analysis.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 20-25. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, approval to initiate Grant Avenue right-of-way vacation. Come on.
I'll take this one, Mayor.
Thanks, Jim.
You bet. So the owners of 506 North Main have requested the city vacate a 60 by 110 portion of unimproved Grant Avenue between Main and Cayman. And this particular right-of-way is adjacent to their current south property line. They'd like the additional property, which they currently maintain, so that they can expand their home. Due to the property line setback requirements, they cannot expand their home as their lot is now configured. Because the likelihood of this portion of Grant Avenue being upgraded to a paved street is low, given the terrain of connecting streets in the neighborhood, staff has no objection to the vacation. And what we're requesting is, if it pleases the council, authorize city staff to proceed with vacation request per code for vacating the right-of-way.
Council, comments for Jim?
Jim, I'm sorry, you might have just said this. Did you say if this vacation's approved, the property will go on to the tax roll?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Jim, can you clarify the vacation portion for the entire of Grant Avenue? Because I think there was another property in the comments from the department and utility comments, vacating the entire Grant Avenue, and then there were some changes.
Right. One of the owners decided, or adjacent properties owners decided they did not want to proceed with the vacation of the Grant adjacent to their property. So they just are doing the easterly half between Maine and Cayman.
So is there any concern from our Public Works folks, or is this good to move forward then with just this primary request then?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just have one quick question, Jim. Is this a request to vacate the entire street right-of-way?
It's the width, just the depth of which, of 60 feet, or the 110 feet, is just the lot length, if that makes sense.
Is that a street right-of-way?
Yes.
So typically, when we vacate a street, half goes to one property owner and half to the other?
That's correct.
Is that what's happening here?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that, Counselor.
Well, sometimes one property owner doesn't want to participate and the
Right.
whole thing goes to the other property owner. But it was confusing looking at these lines the way it was drawn. I couldn't tell if it was going to go half and half.
Yes, it'll go half and half.
Okay.
Okay, comments, questions, any more, Jim? If there isn't, how would you like to proceed?
I'll move to authorize city staff to proceed with a vacation request per code for vacating the right-of-way.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and initiate the Grant Avenue right-of-way vacation. on Grant Avenue. All right, any of the comments? Melissa, roll call on this? No? I thought I saw that. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I was testing you, Melissa. All right, next item is a public hearing for approval of the Lindy Lane right-of-way vacation. This will require an enactment of ordinance. Jim, are you going to handle
I'll
this?
take this. The developer of the Timber Cove housing project, that is Red Moon Development and Gateway Oasis 2 LLC, have submitted an application requesting the city vacate the south 1,040 feet, more or less, of the Lindy Lane right-of-way. This right-of-way is in this portion is 60 feet wide. This portion of Lindy Lane abuts the applicant's property to the east and west and terminates on the south end at the applicant's property. Lindy Lane north of the Timber Cove property will remain a public road. And on September 1st, the City Council initiated the vacation process for Lindy Lane. City staff has no objection to the proposed vacation request. The Water Board and Zipley Fiber will require easements over a portion of the proposed vacated right-of-way, and the proposed ordinance includes language requiring the easements. And I don't know
Any other
if Adam
comments
has...
for Jim before we go to public hearing? All right, I'll open the public hearing on the enactment of ordinance to vacate requested portion of right-of-way on Lindy Lane. Any public comments? Adam?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, this is just a bit of housekeeping. I believe the councilors and yourself and the city are familiar with the Timber Cove project. This is just an issue identified by the engineers, just allows some flexibility in developing the project. There'll still be streets in that area, but those streets now will be conformed to the project and not be limited to the old, archaic, and never developed city right-of-way. And as staff said, the northern portion of Lindy Lane will remain a right-of-way. In fact, my client the developer will actually be improving that as part of the project. So I think this is just kind of a win-win for everybody.
Right. Any questions for Adam on this? No? Anyone else in the public comment here? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. And council, how would you like to proceed?
I'll make a motion to enact an ordinance to vacate the requested portion of the right-of-way on Lindy Lane.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to go ahead and move vacation of the portion on Lindy Lane. Roll call vote, Melissa?
An ordinance providing for the vacation of an undeveloped portion of Lindy Lane located south of Ocean Boulevard, found in Section 21, Township 25, Range 13, west of the Willamette Meridian, Coos County, Oregon. Councilor DeNovo?
Aye.
Councilor Farmer?
Aye.
Councilor Kilmer?
Aye.
Councilor Marlar?
Aye.
Councilor Matthews?
Aye.
Councilor Miles?
Aye.
Mayor Benetti?
Aye.
Ordinance number 529 has been duly enacted.
Thank you. Okay, next item is consideration of termination of water line easement on Timber Cove property. Roger, are you handling this, or Jim?
I've got this.
Jim?
Yes, back in 1968, a group of landowners granted the cities of Coos Bay and North Bend a water line easement over their property. The easement is over land currently owned now by Gateway Oasis 2 LLC, which together with Red Moon Development is making the Timber Cove manufactured home park project. The Water Board does not currently have infrastructure within the easement. They do not intend to make use of the easement in the future and do not oppose the city's quitting any claim to rights under the easement. And the city of North Bend has recently terminated its claim to the easement. What staff is requesting is, if it pleases the council, authorize the city manager to sign a termination easement document eliminating the city of Coos Bay's rights to the water line easement recorded in Coos County with recording number of 68-1-24877. And Adam's also...
Okay. Adam, did you have any comments on this?
Again, what I'm learning when you're getting into some of these old properties that haven't been developed in a while and have kind of sat there, you learn that there were efforts made at one point that kind of were given up for a variety of reasons, and some steps along the way were taken to develop the property, and those were long abandoned, and this is one of them. And this was an easement that was granted so that the cities, which were handling the easements for water lines, et cetera, before the water board really was. So the easements inured to the cities, but they were never used. And of course, new easements will need to be made for new water lines, and those will be made with the water board. And of course, there'll be no problems with that. But this is just, again, as with the Lindy Lane right of way, this is just kind of an old thing on the books that needs to be updated.
Thanks. I don't know, I looked at this, it's kind of interesting who signatures and people were involved in this easement. I don't know if you got a chance to look at the Conrads and Hillstroms, so going back in time, some of the people that were really involved in some development around here.
You're not on it, Mr. Mayor?
Pardon?
It precedes you.
It does precede me. Oh my gosh, thanks Lucinda. All right. Okay, so how would you like to proceed on this? Is there any more comments, council? Anyone else? Okay, how would you like to proceed on this?
I move that we authorize the city manager to sign a termination of easement document eliminating the city of Coos Bay's right to the water line easement recorded in Coos County with a recording number of 68 TAC 1 TAC 24877.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go ahead and authorize the city manager to termination of the water line easement on Timber Cove property. Are there any other comments on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you. Good seeing you, Adam.
Thanks,
Good seeing you too. We'll see you around.
Bye.
All right. City manager's report. Roger?
See if we can get the screen to work up there.
Do we get a PowerPoint tonight, Roger?
2 PowerPoints.
Ooh.
Did Mark help you with any of them?
He did not. But we are going to talk about the fire department. So, first, as the council's aware, the Coos Bay Downtown Association had to make the difficult decision to go ahead and cancel this year's trick or treat and trunk or treat. Not because they wanted to, but because of concerns with COVID. I'd had a discussion with Battalion Chief Atkins, who's here tonight, about this, because part of it was we were getting feedback from the community that thought that the city council has canceled Halloween. So I don't know how that always happens, but of course you know that you did not do that. So in this week's Friday update, Battalion Chief Atkins put something together. It'll look exactly like this, but it talks about, there are issues with COVID and about safety and about maybe some safe alternatives. And what the fire department's going to do is they're going to have a safe alternative. They're going to have a drive-up where a family can come up, their kids can be in costume, and they'll be given a sanitized, some candy for them. They won't have to get out. They won't have to reach into a bowl. It'll be a safe way to do it. It'll happen at all 3 fire stations in downtown, in East Side, and in Empire. And it'll go from 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. on October 31st. So, Battalion Chief, thank you for putting this together. I think the community is going to be very pleased that they can do this. We are not counseling Halloween. We're not preventing anybody from either going from door to door. It's not recommended, and we're not preventing anybody from giving out should they wish. But this is some safer alternatives. As I shared with the council earlier, you gave us permission to consider or investigate refinancing the 2009 bond financing for the downtown fire station. And because it's a good time, we were able to save the taxpayers ultimately $844,484. I will share with you that we're not quite done. We're looking at an opportunity to maybe refinance unurban renewal debt to see if there's any potential savings there as well.
Great.
So that should help us. If that's able to be accomplished, we might be able to save enough money to take on another project. Heard a still small voice in my head there. Progress on your goal for updating or evaluating updating the streetlight infrastructure. So originally we did an analysis with Amoresco. They thought that there was a potential that we could save some money. As you may recall, we have over 1,100 street lamps in the city, and the annual cost is over $200,000 to keep those lit at night. The assessment thought we could save about approximately $55,000 a year, but the actual audit actually said $50,000. Now that may grow depending on some potential changes in rate structures with PP&L, but this is what we're assuming we'll save. So on the 27th, you'll receive an actual report from Amoresco outlining their audit and their findings. From there, that'll be presented to be accepted at a future council meeting. And then from there, they'll be exploring how do we finance it? And can we pay the debt service payments out of this savings, which that's the whole program. So we're moving forward, and in December, I expect that you'll have a financing option, and then it's probably a project, should that all pan out, that we can undertake this next year.
Goodness. Roger, could I ask you a quick question about that?
Most certainly.
You knew I was gonna have a question, right? Are they at the point now where their study is showing a recommendation as far as placement of streetlights? Or is that down the road once we start the project?
I don't have that answer for you, but I don't believe it's there yet.
Because I know that was one of the things we discussed with Amoresco, was strategically, you know, how do we decide what lights get placed where, and do we have placements, and are they in the wrong place now? And they promised that they were going to have recommendations for that.
We should hold them to it.
Because they said there now are standards as far as where they should be and where they should not be.
Correct.
Okay.
This is probably ahead of schedule, but looking at that particular model, when we do come to it, it might also be good to look at versions of it that have the cap on top that preserve some of the lighting so that you get to see some of the night sky still.
Yeah. Dark star compliance.
That one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the dark sky compliance. Yeah. Dark star.
Sounds cooler that way.
Sounds like a good movie theme.
Yeah, it's that's the Star Wars nerd in me coming out. Yeah.
Alrighty, a little bit of update on your projects. You can see this is 6th Avenue over in East Side, the Safe Routes for School project. You can see that a tremendous amount of sidewalk has been installed. Randy shared with us this morning that he estimates that the work on 6th Avenue will be completed within a couple of weeks, and then they'll move on to D Street. So I think that means it could be completed in 3 weeks or so, because things always take a little longer than we think. But that's moving forward. This will be finished this year, I believe, is our estimate. And of course, if you've been down on 4th Street, it's definitely a challenge to get around. Traffic seems to change every day, but they're already started putting new curbs in down in the block with outdoor in, and they started placing the cages for the new street lamps, our street lights. So things are moving forward. This will be a project with us for quite a while. Not our project, but it's always nice to see progress. Amazing, the new elementary school and how it's coming together. Excuse me, yeah, middle school. One of your projects, this is the Flora building. I wanted to show you some progress. This is the side facing Bayshore, the backside on Front Street, and this side next to Wayne's Color Center. It's really coming along, making great progress. New windows are really nice. The Tioga, of course, this is the picture before you authorized a facade grant. This is what it looked like this morning. I think it's probably changed since I took this picture at 7. But they're making great progress, and it's looking really nice. This next week, the Hollering Place development for the Upper Bluff will be going before the Planning Commission. I believe that's the site plan review for that. So it's exciting to see that moving forward.
Roger, is this the cultural center?
That is the Cultural Center.
That's exciting.
So renderings, that's in the Planning Commission report. And then for Coos Bay Village, you know they've been working on the first 3 buildings. They're nearly complete, at least as shells. They've begun working on the Building D, which will house a couple different businesses. And they've got to the point now where there's some pavement down there. In fact, this picture looks a little dated. It was this morning at 7. Now there's actually street markings on it. So you can see the parking lines and some of the other components. This picture is actually taken from the History Museum side, and so you can see they were already making the connections. So those 2 parking lots will join. From there, before they can build another building and expand, they need to get this intersection. And I can tell you it's been a yeoman's work to shepherd this through, and Jennifer Wurzing has been the person that keeps bringing the partners together. You have numerous partners. You have the developer, you have the port, the city, ODOT, and ODOT Rail. And when you get that many governments and one developer in one room, or virtually, it is difficult to keep things moving. And this is a project, or this work's been going on now, I think, 3 years, Jim? And I think we have approval to move forward, and we're hoping they can go out to bid within the next couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. But it is very technical, and most of it's being driven by ODOT. And then I wanted to share with you on the Old Connects, we now have permits have been pulled to demo that building and the car wash. And that will be a future First Interstate Bank location. So I didn't actually take pictures of and give you an update on all projects, but some highlights. And there's a lot going on. And I believe that concludes my report.
Great. Good report. Council comments. Let's start with Rob.
Thought it was Drew's turn to go first. The Coos Bay Library Foundation is having their after hours at the library 2020. It's a virtual event this year. It's Saturday, October 31st from 7 to 8 p.m. Participants will get a customized event to-go bag with hors d'oeuvres from Black Market Gourmet, your choice of beer, wine, or non-alcoholic beverage, and commemorative gifts. The virtual guest speaker will be a criminal historian, J.D. Chandler, author of Murder and Mayhem in Portland, Oregon, and 4 other local history books. It will also have an online auction, and some of those auction items are available for preview at Black Market Gourmet now. And the tickets are $30 now through October 26th. I'm not sure, Bob, do you know, are they still accepting items?
I'm sorry?
Do you know, are they still accepting donations for that event?
I think that they've got all of the auction items that they need.
So that's all I...
You can see those online right now, you can bid on them online.
Yeah, if you go to coosbaylibrary.org, the event's on there, and there's some links to the auction on here. And secondly, my brother is a fire engine salesman now, And so I was talking to him about donating the fire engine, the Coos Bay old fire engine. And he sent me some suggestions. So I talked to Chief Anderson to see where we were on that. And he said that according to the fire marshal, the only departments to lose engines were Detroit, Phoenix, and McKinsey fire departments, I believe. I believe McKinsey and Detroit have both received donations. And Phoenix actually lost a water truck, so they're not in need of a fire engine. So the chief actually wanted to know what direction the council wanted him to go. My brother also suggested there's a very small department near Klamath Lake that they're in need of a new fire engine and they don't have a very big budget. So I guess Chief Anderson would just like the council to direct him where we would like him to go looking.
Is that a suggestion?
Will he be bringing that back to us, or how does that work?
I'm not sure.
I think you did leave it with him to go ahead and surplus. We were going to surplus the engine anyway. We didn't think we were going to get much for it. And I think the chief thought this was a great opportunity, especially given the fire season, to maybe re-gift something that we don't need, but maybe someone else does need.
Well, thank you, Councilor Miles, for doing all that legwork.
He did say that he hasn't got a chance to talk to Detroit Fire Department yet, and that's who the fire marshal is actually recommending, according to him. So my suggestion would be to have him talk to them first and see if they need it. If they don't, then I would like him to go find another small department somewhere that might need it.
Are we in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think
Everyone?
it's a good
Okay.
idea.
I agree.
Good.
That's all I have.
All right. Stephanie?
The only thing that I have is, I know it's hard to believe that 2020 is entering the final quarter, fourth quarter, which means that Bus Jam is literally right around the corner. And we are kicking it off this weekend, if you can believe that.
Wow.
With kind of a cool event. The North American Railcar Association is coming to our area, and they are starting, they actually tried to get this put together last year, and doing a toy drive in conjunction with their visit to the coast. And so the speeders will be back in Coos Bay on Saturday, but they're stopping in Mapleton, in Lakeside on Friday, and they're collecting toys at those locations. And then they will be headed to Coquille for lunch on Saturday, and will return to the Coos Bay Boardwalk on Saturday about 1:30. So I just wanted to let you know, if you were itching to make a donation, a toy donation, that would be a great time. And for the public as well, they will be accepting those donations. Those will go to the Coos Bay North Bend Rotary KDOC Bus Jam Toy and Food Drive. And it's a great opportunity to see some of those cars that are still running, those rail cars that are still running, learn about the history. There should be about 31. I talked with their organizer today. So it should be quite a thing to bring the kids down and take a look at. About 1:30 at the Coos Bay Boardwalk is where they'll be on Saturday. And that's all I have.
Cinda.
I just had a question for Roger. Roger, you sent us an email recently in regards to Resolution 2019, which was our anti-racist resolution, saying that we would support work in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I thought we received an email from you giving us some good news that we've made some first steps to work in that space, and I was hoping you could give us an update.
Yes, actually, Coos Bay is not alone. There are a number of cities that are looking at this training, and most of our cities in Oregon are served by city-county insurance, and so city-county insurance has stepped up. They're putting together classes on that for us, and we have signed up. We anticipate it'll be a 3-hour training. And I want to thank our finance director for going and looking for the various options for us. This is the most viable option at this point in time. We anticipate, or we've asked, if we'll be able to record it. Half of our workforce works shift work, evenings and weekends. So we're hoping that we can record it so they can attend or coerce CIS to hold it on multiple times and dates. So we anticipate the class will not be until early next year.
And I think it's early next year because there are a number of cities in front of us, is that correct?
We're number 11.
We're number 11, okay. And just as a reminder, that is training that city councilors will go through, the police department will go through, and all city staff will go through, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think we also said that we'd hoped through this resolution that this was just the first step, so this would be training that we would do on an annual basis, is that correct?
I anticipate that to be true.
I'm sounding like a police officer, thank you very much.
Anything else?
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Phil?
I just want to reiterate what several of you said during the meeting about our housing needs analysis. Great work, Drew and Stephanie. That was much needed. And, you know, we had an agenda item to convert a building back to a residence, and it's just one residence, but one counts. And you know, we really need a lot of housing. I get confronted with it every day, and realtors will tell you there's plenty of people begging, and a lot of people willing to purchase or rent a place, but they can't afford it because the market is just the way it is. And so that need is there, and we have a lot of people in our community that are in dire need of just some place to lay their head, that they don't have to have 3 jobs to be able to have it. And it's very difficult. So thank you all for that work. I had a discussion today with Roger about a number of different things, but one of those things was perhaps maybe the council could revisit an idea that came up out of one of our meetings with our urban renewal consultant. And I think the mayor was one that made the suggestion, couldn't we have a conversation about maybe creating an urban renewal district for low-income housing? And I think now is probably an appropriate time to put that conversation back on track and see if maybe I don't know. I don't even know if there's an area in town that we can do that, but it sure deserves the conversation.
So, I mean, we don't have to, it can even be an existing area, am I correct? Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be a non-developed area. I mean, that'd be the preference, but where it's going to potentially develop, because you don't want to be having something sitting there that's not going to develop either.
Correct. I think some of the discussions that Elaine has had with us that we could look at, and what she suggested we do is we wait until we got done with the buildable lands inventory.
Okay.
And your housing needs analysis. The next step would be to look at, is there an area that's undeveloped that you could incentivize somehow through an urban renewal agency? And I think the theory we were looking at, or the process we were looking at for incentives, was that we would provide future incentives or repayments to a developer if they were to develop, put in the infrastructure to develop an area that's not developed through future property taxes. A percentage would go back to them to repay them for that infrastructure and development that would support houses. And that helps make those developments affordable. So I think the next step, if we're going to take this next step, it would be for the agency to bring back Elaine Howard and then begin talking about what are the next steps in that process. You would have to probably determine not only you have that developable land, but do you have that available land?
Well, now that we have the inventory, I think, you know, we have a little bit more. try to figure it out. I don't know that it's easily doable, but I'm just thinking now that we have that inventory, it's probably a good time to start that conversation back up again.
And I think, I mean, we actually saw this example at the League of Oregon Cities Conference, so there are already some cities doing this, and I think that's why we became inspired, if I remember correctly.
I can't remember, but somehow John Day comes to mind.
Yeah, there was a couple, I think, even one in Woodburn or somewhere, that is in development, so. Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we should visit, but, so I don't know how we go about that. We can, I guess, discuss it in urban renewal.
Actually, it is on your goals, so.
Pardon?
It is on your city goals, council
Okay.
goals.
And the last thing that I would bring up, and Roger already touched on it, is all our streets. We have a lot of projects going on, and there's, even aside from those big ones that Roger highlighted, there's still a lot of potholes. A lot got filled this year, and I don't know if that current list is done for the year, if we're going to start back up in the spring, but there's still a lot more, and I know the list is there. But I think the city has been very good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars when it comes to the transportation utility fee, and a lot has been done through that. And thank you to staff for doing what they do, because it's a monumental task, and there's a lot of things that need to be repaired. That's all I have.
Thanks, Phil. Carmen?
Yeah, I just wanted to once again thank Tristan Reeser about all the hard work he did down at the park. I live near there, and I saw him down there constantly, and got to evaluate his work today. Did a beautiful job, and as a volunteer, which is a huge gift to the city and to all the people who use the park on a regular basis. I think it's a really important asset for our youth down there, and I just really wanted to say thank you again to him and to everybody who's helped out with that. I know he had some volunteers as well. I also want to say I'm excited for the bus jam. That's really good to hear that we're getting an early jump on it. I feel that this holiday season this year is going to be a very difficult one for a lot of people. So I think if you have anything to lend going into this next holiday season with a generous heart is a good line to toe. Also, my wife and I keep an eye on the COVID information here locally, and we've noticed a little bump here recently, so I think it warrants just saying once again, everybody try to be safe out there, keep following protocols as best you can, and also be kind to those employees and small business owners that are out there trying to do the best they can and follow the law. A little bit of patience goes a long way to, I guess, maintaining their mental health. So that's all I've got.
Thanks, Carmen. Drew?
I appreciate Phil bringing back up the urban renewal zone idea for residential development. When I was sitting on the Rural Advisory Committee for House Bill 2001, they brought up a lot of suggestions that cities, they want to incorporate into that piece of legislation for cities to undertake to try and incentivize the development of housing. But the vast majority of what they were proposing in that committee were things that Coos Bay has been doing for anywhere from 2 to 5 years already. So we're a little ahead of the curve there, and the thing we found to be the most productive in that time frame was the opportunity zone. By far it had the greatest yield. So the best incentive towards development that has proven so far for us has been the direct financial incentive. If we're able to alleviate the development costs for capital infrastructure, that I believe will lead to the greater development of housing. I feel when we talk about housing, it's important to also consider, when you look at Portland's data, it's based on census data and projections, but that can poorly account for the homeless population, which can be extremely hard to reach and have complete a census if you can locate the individuals. The 2019 housing study for Coos County as a whole showed 1,299 homeless individuals, just that they located on one day throughout Coos County. In talking to Patrick Wright over at Operation Rebuild Hope, he had received the number that around 400 of those individuals were veterans, so nearly a third.
What was that number again?
Total homeless, 1,299, with the veterans being around 400. And other than that, somber numbers, but a reminder to everybody in the public, remember to register to vote. I learned something the other day. I went to the Meet the Candidates event over at Airport Heights, and I learned from some folks passing by that soon-to-be adults, folks that are 17, are able to register to vote ahead of turning 18. I don't know if that's contingent upon them turning 18 before the election or not, but it's good to know that that can be taken care of sooner rather than later. So folks at home with kids, if they can get them out to register ahead of time, and everybody make sure they're registered themselves, that's a great thing to do. That's all I got.
Thanks, Drew. Good comments by everybody. Yeah, we have a lot going on, with the housing getting done and now moving forward on another project on the renewal that Phil suggested. And the project that Roger mentioned, I constantly am out and about, and it's great to see it. Have a lot of positive comments from individuals about how we've done repairs on the streets and potholes, and so they're pleased on what we're doing. The other thing is, Carmen mentioned on it about the COVID, something that came up, and I think I've mentioned it. SOWEB with Coos County and Curry County have put some individuals out that go around. The statistics from September 5th to October 5th, they've done 672 visits to different businesses in those two counties. 9,750 masks were handed out. Compliance is at 99% in those businesses, and the visitors that are there and the patrons. Business owners and managers are very appreciative of the local support, so they go in, they talk about it, ask if there's anything they can do to facilitate or assist them, and so they've been very happy and pleased with that. And the businesses all receive a link to free PPE through the Oregon Small Businesses. So that's what they're doing, and it's been very productive, and they're going to continue to do it for as long as they can. So anyway. The other thing I want to announce or mention is that we have a lot of employees with a lot of tenure that have done a great service for us. And today, Jim Hosley is 15 years. So thank you, Jim, and congratulations. And that's the end of my comments. And we'll be going into the Urban Renewal Agency meeting, which Stephanie will be running.
All right, I will call the Urban Renewal Agency Committee meeting together, or agency meeting together, unless anybody needs a break.
I'm just grab some coffee, but go ahead. I don't think it matters.
Okay,
Go
okay,
ahead.
so you're in the room. Yes. All right, first item on the agenda is the public comments. Sensing none, we'll move on to the second item, which is the consent calendar. And what does the agency, how would the agency like to proceed? I guess?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent calendar. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of the Downtown District Street Improvement Project expansion. And Jim?
Yes, ma'am, I'll take this one. So you may recall that the low bid for the 4th Street rehab project came in under the engineer's estimate by approximately $700,000. City staff has explored additional work to be done with these remaining funds budgeted for the 4th Street project. Staff first looked at the Curtis Avenue area between 4th and the State Highway, but does not recommend rehabbing that part of Curtis at this time due to potential issues with the existing underlying stormwater infrastructure. Staff now recommends a full curb and gutter, sidewalk, and road bed rebuild for the following streets between the Broadway and Bayshore couplet. And that would be Alder Avenue, Birch Avenue, Cedar Avenue, and Date Avenue. It should be noted that there's also a brownfield project we have going on in Cedar, and we coordinate that project with this road project. And should the agency authorize staff to proceed with these projects, the next step will be to contract with an engineering firm to design the improvements, and construction would be expected to start in the spring of 2021. And we're requesting the agency authorize staff to utilize funds that remain from the 4th Street project to those between Broadway and Bayshore.
I think some of those are actually between Bayshore and Front.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's not the couple, it is Bayshore. It's Bayshore, yes, Bayshore and Front, not Broadway.
Okay. Are there any questions, other comments?
Just confirming, so the entire project price is, we approved 2.7 million, is that correct? For the entire 4th Street project price?
Yes, and what this represents is, these are urban renewal dollars that were undertaken specifically for street improvements. So we went out for a bond for those funds. We have those funds at our disposal. So these are remaining after the 4th Street project, even with contingency and even with an additional amount on top of that.
Great, thank you, Roger. Thank you, Jim.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious, how much would it have cost to complete 4th Street from Donley to, what is that, Elrod?
Right. I don't remember what the cost was off the top of my head.
But you couldn't use these funds to do it.
Oh, you couldn't?
No, because it's outside the urban renewal zone. And revenues that are raised through urban renewal can only be spent on urban renewal projects within the district.
Okay, I thought it went to Elrod. My mistake.
No, it actually ends at Donnelly.
Okay.
But we do have a cost analysis for that portion,
Yes,
right?
we do.
So we could still think about using that with some of the tough dollars if we wanted to, or some other way.
I
right?
think you could look at, we would probably recommend not using tough dollars, but maybe looking at surface program funds through state and fed dollars, or looking at jurisdictional exchange dollars.
Okay.
Or a combination thereof.
All right.
I had a question. In terms of the 4th Street project, do we think we're out of the woods in terms of any potential big bumps in cost?
Because of the history of that area, and how things were built, I'm still leery that we might find something, because we haven't really dug into the asphalt yet.
Yeah.
But I think everything we can see is just as our geotech said, there's no roadbed, it's built on the dirt.
So it's kind of worst case scenario already, yeah.
Okay.
And then, so this money that we would appropriate for these improvements would be outside of the bid cost plus the 15%.
And
Contingency.
another, we actually put another buffer, I think another 10%
Oh, okay.
buffer on top of the 15% contingency.
Yep.
To give us a little more leeway. And what you're doing tonight only obligates you to go due to design. Then we still have that period of time while we're in design, should something else come up. We can always take money back, and then take those projects on in the future.
I see. All right.
So the 4th Street, it's a good question, Carmen. The 4th Street project won't be finished for quite some time. Is there any concern, though, if we start this project?
Staff's pretty comfortable
Okay.
at this point, especially with adding an extra layer of protection in there.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? Comments? How do you wish to proceed?
I'll move to authorize staff to utilize the funds that remain from the 4th Street project on Alder Avenue, Birch Avenue, Cedar Avenue, and Date Avenue between Broadway and Bayshore. Do I need to include Front Street on this, Roger, and Front Street?
Bay
That'll
Shore
be fine. I
Okay.
think the ones identified within the attachment.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Oh, second.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm looking around waiting for
No,
Joe to
I-
say something there.
I should have done it. There you go.
All right, we have a motion and a second to utilize funds for the from the Fourth Street project for Alder, Birch, Cedar, and Date Avenue between Broadway, Bay Shore, and Front Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is authorization, preparation of requests for proposal design for Coos History Museum Plaza. Is Jim taking that as well?
I can take this one.
Oh, Roger? Okay.
Um,
Had a 50-50 chance of getting
Yeah,
that right.
not too long ago, the agency and the council has talked about a memorial for Alonzo Tucker. We were able to gain the assistance from Coos History Museum, who took on a project of actually a community-wide assessment. What do we need to do? What does it need to look like? Where does it need to go? Early on with that task force, the question came up about where, not what it looks like, but where can it go? And there was consensus among the task force that the best place to put it would be on Front Street at the History Museum and hopefully in some future plaza. The mayor and I sit on that task force, and we threw up an idea of possibly if the trustees would be willing to accept that, maybe the agency would be willing to put together a project where we could hire a design consultant who would come in, first secure a concept plan, and then once that's accepted, then actually go into create the design plans for that. And then the idea from there would be that the History Museum would have a shovel-ready project that they could go out and seek grant funding for. Since that time, you gave your blessing to make that proposal. We made that proposal. The trustees have not only accepted placing the memorial there, but also taking the agency up in its offer for the plans. So our next step would be to advertise, put together a request for proposals so that we could seek the services of a design professional to help the Coos History Museum in undertaking this process. So with that, we're asking for your blessing to initiate advertising. We're still working. We have Jim has been working, and we have a rough draft, and we'll be working with the History Museum to refine that, but we'll need your permission to initiate the process.
Is there any question from, anyone have any questions?
I don't have a question, I have a comment, Stephanie, but I just, also, I think it's important that we recognize that the History Museum always wanted to put a plaza back there. That was part of their initial plans. So we're helping them facilitate this, and we're also accomplishing, I believe, if we decide to go ahead with this, with the Alonzo Memorial site, which I think is a much better site than what's been discussed in the past. And it'll be beneficial all the way around. So I think it's a good suggestion on Roger's part.
I agree.
Can I just clarify a question? So this is a memorial garden, correct?
I believe it'll be a plaza with a place for memorial area.
Okay, so it's not just to, for the Alonzo Tucker Memorial, there will be other representation in this plaza, is that correct?
That's correct, and I have neglected to say there would also be a connection from the plaza to Coos Bay Village via a boardwalk to connect that. And I would be remiss if I didn't share that Mike Vaughn came in and met with me this week and reminded me that this isn't just something that was thought about for the Coos History Museum, but this is part of the, I think it's the 1996 Front Street Master Plan, envisioned a plaza somewhere in that area.
Thank
So
you.
this long hoped for helps just bring another piece of the puzzle to closer to reality.
That's great. Any other questions,
I think it's a great idea.
comments? Okay.
Full support.
All right, how do you wish to proceed?
I move that we authorize staff to create a request for proposal and process to retain a design consultant on behalf of the Coos History Museum to create design plans for the Coos History Museum Plaza.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is the approval to initiate a request for development proposal process.
Back in 2018, the agency advertised for development proposals for 2 vacant lots. One would be the lot that formerly housed the downtown fire station at 150 South 4th Street, and the other one would be the former Lockhart building site. We did secure proposals. We did initiate negotiations, first with Rodeo Steakhouse, and then later with, and I'll forget their name. Row Credit Union, thank you. Unfortunately, neither one of those resulted in a development agreement. Since that time, we have been contacted by 2 other interested parties interested in developing a building and siting a business at that location. Given that we have 2, I thought it might be appropriate to go back out and request development proposals for the old fire station lot. As you're all aware, you've already made a decision, and we're already in the design plans for a parking lot for the old Lockhart site. So if it meets with your approval, we actually already have a rough draft, which we've attached to your council packet. That's almost ready to go out.
Looked very
Should you
thorough. Is it very similar to what we did before?
It is, although it's been updated.
Updated with dates and everything.
And it does reflect the new parking lot that's going in, and only that we have the one lot.
Any other questions or comments? All right, how do you wish to proceed?
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, it would probably be wise.
I'll make a motion to approve staff's request to initiate a request for development proposal process for the city-owned property located at 150 South 4th Street.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval for staff's request to initiate a request for development proposal process for city-owned property at 150 South 4th Street. Any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, Roger, did you want to give a report on a couple of items
I do.
for the agency?
It always seems that once we put together the agenda, that new things come up. Things are very fluid here at the city and constantly in flux. Back on September 1st, the Urban Renewal Agency received a request for a facade improvement grant for this building, which formerly housed Oregon Seafoods. You approved that grant request, but it also included a mural. And the mural is actually the one on the top screen. That was the draft one. The agency, after some discussion, decided that they would like to request the owner and or staff to seek some other renderings from a professional artist. Carolyn took on this project and worked with a mural designer who came up with the mural at the bottom of the screen. When you approved the grant request, it was for a total of $5,000 for the project, which included half of what the owner thought the mural would cost if she developed the one she had, which was $1,000. The agency authorized funds for design of other mural concept. And unfortunately, Carolyn took that to mean that bank of money, that $5,000, was for putting the mural up. I can share with you that projected cost for putting the mural up, and I guess I should go to the next page. The mural would be on the bottom picture on the cinder block wall to the north. The property owner actually owns both properties. But the cost to design and to paint the mural was a total of $6,000. So you have already approved $10,000, but part of that was for design. You have options here, and I think I might have sent those to you earlier today, but you have been doing 50% of costs related to projects. If you took that approach to this project, which the facade upgrades would cost a total of $8,000 and the mural at $6,000, so half of those combined costs would be $7,000. Your other option is that you did, in essence, approve $10,000 to the project to include design costs. In looking at this, I think the other alternative is that, and probably what I would suggest, is that you could approve $9,000. That would take care of half of the facade improvement costs, and the other portion of that would pay for the bulk of the mural. That would leave the owner with still paying $1,000 of the mural. But staff would suggest, and this is after talking with Urban Renewal Chair Kelmer, is you want some guarantee that if you're putting this money out on a mural, that especially on an older building that may or may not be down the road, is that we enter an agreement whereby that mural has to be up there for at least 5 years. It has to be maintained. And if it was to go away or someone was to paint it over, that the agency would be reimbursed the cost of the mural. You actually do have language similar to that now, that it has to be maintained. It just doesn't have that portion about if it were to go away or not be maintained, that the agency would be reimbursed.
I think that's reasonable.
That's a great solution.
Yeah. Can you remind me what kind of business is going in there?
I don't think we know that.
Okay.
Oops.
So do we need to make a motion on this, or just?
If you like the last alternative, I would just ask that you give me authority to alter the agreement to those terms.
Okay. How does the agency feel on that?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
In essence, you've already approved the expenditure.
So we just need a motion then to allow staff to alter the agreement,
Yeah, then it would be not to exceed $9,000.
not to exceed $9,000.
So move.
Second.
All right.
Nice move.
Okay, we have a motion to authorize staff to alter the agreement and approve $9,000 for the project. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I think this is going to be a nice addition, and it's going to be seen by a lot of people. There's a tremendous amount of traffic that goes on a daily basis to Cash and Carry and to Agritech. So.
All right.
The other one is the Tioga. As we've talked, the Tioga is the largest facade grant project that you've undertaken. And I think the owners are doing a great job in moving that forward. Not only is it the largest project, but you had developer who, because it's such a large project, asked for you to do progress payments through this, and you approved a program whereby they would put up a bond to make sure that the project was finished, and second, that we would get affidavits that the contractor was being paid. So thereby you met your existing regulations that we didn't pay till the project was done, or we had some guarantee it would get done, and secondly, that our contractors were getting paid. The owners have been looking into the bonds, and based on their shopping, a bond for this would be somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000. They've asked us to consider other ways to do that because they had hoped to put that $12,000 to $18,000 actually into the project. We looked at other opportunities. They've actually whittled it down. They have enough cash flow and reserves that they can take care of the Koski and the second, the sign, and as well as the back parking lot improvements. Even with that, they're still looking somewhere around $12,000 or so. They asked us to look at other options. We had talked about possibly a lien on the building. Nate and I have discussed that. Given that we would be in the second place with the lien, that's not very appetizing, and I don't believe that puts us in a good position. The last thing we want to do is to have that lien try to exercise foreclosure on a lien and then have to pay off the first lien, which is more than a couple $1 million. And then we would be trying to finish off a project that would probably put us into a prevailing wage issue. The mayor suggested one other alternative, giving his expertise and association in banking, and that was to ask the owners for personal guarantees outside of the LLC. I have spoken to Mr. Crocker, and he said they would be more than willing to do such. So if you're all right with that, I think it's still in keeping with your original approval that we could move forward. We have progress payments. We find some type of guarantee the project's going to get finished. Then if this meets with your approval, then I would work with Nate, or Nate would provide us the documentation we would need for them to sign the personal guarantees. They would still have the option if they wanted to go out and get the bond.
Okay. So at this point, you just need our consensus
I need your consensus.
to go ahead and proceed with drafting the legal documentation. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? Comments? Do we have consensus to allow staff to proceed that way, that direction?
You can see you have a very willing developer who's already been taken on this project and has not received anything from us at this point because we don't have signed agreements.
Roger, if I remember correctly, all of this work will be done by next June, the latest. Right?
I anticipate at the rate they're going, it will be.
It's getting a lot of excitement from the community too. It's really making an enhanced improvement as you come into downtown already. All right.
I believe that was it.
Do we need to talk about the URA incentive for housing, or do we want to take that at another time?
What I will do is I will reach out with Lane Howard and begin that discussion. It's very possible that that may also include work with LCOG, especially with all the work that they've done to help us identify sectors where we could consider. It's very possible that you may decide that you might do your own plan amendment for the downtown district because the port property over in East Side, which is zoned for residential, is included in your downtown zone.
Oh,
And that may be an
I
opportunity.
didn't know that.
I forgot about that.
Really?
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
Oh, look, Phil's getting excited.
Well, I was on the planning commission when we approved that project, what, a gazillion years ago.
Yeah. So you'll have some options to consider.
Okay. So we'll hear about that at a future.
Yeah, and you have different capacity, because you have an existing urban renewal that actually is revenue generating.
Okay. Any other business to come before the agency? Any comments?
I just wanted to make a comment, and Roger referenced council goals, and I've had the time to reflect on goals that we've accomplished in the last 4 years, and really, I just want to thank the staff, the amount of work that has been done in the last 4 years. It's easy for us to sit here and be visionary, but it's something quite different for the staff to actually step up and get all that work done. So if I haven't said thank you enough, I just wanted to take the time to say thank you so much for all of your efforts.
Yes.
Amen.
Very visible in our community, too. We appreciate you. All right, then we are adjourned.